David said, my name is Jason Tate, or JT. I'm with a company called Chatta. You can find us at chatta.ai. We're located here in Calgary. The reason I say that is I was talking to David, and he mentioned that there's people from all around the globe joining us today. So I'm happy to be here and welcome. Like David said, at Chatta, we build state-of-the-art conversational data experiences at the intersection of AI and human ambition. We believe that humans should be able to interact with computers as seamlessly and intuitively as we do with other humans. The catalyst behind Chatta's innovation stemmed from our own experiences of accessing and working with business data. We've all been through the pain when it came to marketing and making informed decisions and strategic actions. We saw and know how important critical data is to making those decisions, but we also knew that accessing that data itself could be profoundly difficult to do. We believe that getting answers and uncovering insights from databases should be much simpler. So we made it our mission to build a powerful solution that would bridge the gap between individuals and their data. So with a vision to enable all of that stuff, we set out working to build some robust conversational AI technologies that would enable individuals to simply ask questions in their own words and get answers on the relevant data and have that returned in real time. Here's a little overview of the conversation that I want to have with you all today. First, I want to take a little quick trip back in time. I want to take a look at where we are today, understand what the future could look like, what we can do about it, and then a little time at the end for some question and answers. I always like to start my presentations with a quote, to try to set the stage for all of our conversation. And this one seemed to fit the best today. Sir William Preece from the British Post Office said, "The Americans have need for the telephone, but we do not. We have plenty of messenger boys." And I don't think that he could have been any more wrong. And before we go forward, I think it's important to put things into context, and that brings us to the history portion. And we need that context to frame where we're going to go, and as a frame of reference, as so when we begin to look back, we can have a context of what we're going to do and how to explain things in the future. We've all heard of Moore's Law and maybe even Nevin's Law. Nevin is from Google's quantum artificial intelligence lab. Wang's Law, Wang's from NVIDIA. But all of those things, all of those laws really only have one thing in common, and that is they explain the capacity of humans to understand exponential growth. They do little to speak or break down this progress into meaningful chunks for us to take forward. That's why I chose Carlota up on the screen here. She's a professor at the Institute of Innovation and Public Purpose, at the University of London. She's an author of Technological Revolutions and Finance Capital. And I'm going to use her model throughout today to talk about how we can move forward. Carlota's model and the life cycle of technical revolution is what you see up here on the screen. It starts with a big bang down in the bottom left and slides to the right over time across that x-axis. On the y-axis, we get the degree of technical and technological maturity and market saturation. So you can see as it starts to grow, we go through phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some examples of what this might look like is when we look at the industrial age or the machine age or even the electric age. When we start to go in phase 1, the new products are built and we have electricity, so we don't have to be next to a river anymore to generate the energy required to build our products and move machines forward. Then we're able to build some infrastructure and we can get further and further away from that river or from that energy source. And until we get a full expansion, and now we see that the consolidation of cities and things in the early 1900s as everybody started to move to where all of the innovation was happening. We can see the same thing happening across all sorts of different ages as well, including the information age, where when they had factories originally, the offices used to be on the factory floor, and then they moved them upstairs. And you've seen images in the past where the factory actually moved upstairs. And then eventually we started to see some new technologies, which allowed the factory to be completely separate from those knowledge workers. We can talk about that in the computer age. We can talk about this and apply the same model for the internet age, i.e. Web 1.0, or the social media age, which we are probably at the end of phase to for, believe it or not. I think there's still a lot to go through when it comes to the social media and Web 2.0 phase. And we're already talking about Web 3.0, of course, too, as everybody knows. But let's take Carlota's model and apply it in the modern world. So here's a guy that some of you might know. His name is John McCarthy. And believe it or not, this guy back in 1955 coined the term artificial intelligence. And so if we were to apply Carlota's law, that puts us somewhere in the middle of phase three from an AI perspective. If it takes 50 years to get through phase one and phase two, we're somewhere in the middle of phase three. And so that makes sense. If you look at a recent study from MIT, roughly 24% of today's businesses claim to be in that spot and are starting to use AI. And we've seen new industries and technologies and infrastructure appear. Well, this isn't new. There are two cultural dynamics that have happened, and we're all aware of them that have, over the past couple of years. And the first one is COVID-19 and the disruption it caused. So when we want to talk about data dexterity, the COVID-19 pandemic really accelerated the awareness and the importance of data and science and facts. While companies may have paid some lip service to the importance of data before, that case got that the case that a good idea and is essential to marketing and making informed and prudent and judicious decisions were made crystal clear over the past couple of years with the COVID pandemic. Additionally, self-awareness was on the rise, and individuals now consumed information and data when they want and how they want. We can thank Apple for their iPhone, the iPad, the Androids that are out there in the world. We live in a increasingly decentralized information zone, which means employees, like customers, can select the data they engage with and trust, both in positive and negative ways. Those have consequences. And so we can look at that from the consumer perspective, and we might call that fake news. And we, as corporate persons, have to share that responsibility and make sure that that doesn't happen too inside of the organizations that we're working at. And so, thus, the concept of data dexterity and data profitability, which I'm here to talk to you about today, begins. So, companies have been working to become more data driven for years. We again apply Carlota's rule to it, and you can see data driven starting there back at the beginning of phase one and roughly 50 years. So if we're talking early 1970s, and that's about accurate when companies really started to pinpoint and use data, but they were getting mixed results, and these efforts played out over time, and organizations and the persistence and resilience and execution and the relentless drive to use that data became more and more informed. And those companies that were the early adopters are now the ones who've distinguished themselves and prevailed over companies that are starting to struggle. However, in the latest New Vantage Partner annual survey, which tracks the progress of corporate data initiatives, corporate chief data and information and analytics executives reported that a cultural change is the most important part of the business. So it's not just using that data, it's talking about the cultural problem. And it's an understated problem. And to a degree, it's that is perpetually understated, is that becoming data driven is about the people and the ability to adapt to that change. So not just shoving data at them, but what they're able to do with it and be able to adapt to all of this data that's coming into them. So long established companies which have been successful over generations or even centuries are unlikely to change overnight. So we're seeing them slow. And the adoption of the internet and digital transformation efforts, you've seen how long it's taken them. It's played out over a quarter of a century for many of those organizations. And similarly, the effort by companies to become data driven represents a business transformation that is also taking that long. So large organizations are actually taking quite a bit longer than the smaller and more nimble organizations are. But this leaves a tremendous opportunity and a competitive advantage for organizations that want to achieve higher data dexterity. And data dexterity enables businesses to go beyond being just data driven and empowers them to become data profitable, which is the key point that I want to discuss with you here today. So when we break this down, an interesting slide that and a stat that I got from Gartner was that demand outside of IT is growing more than twice as fast in IT than it is in IT. So if we want to be data profitable, we need to make sure that we have data dexterity, which means that outside of IT, we have the people and the data scientists, the analytic skills, and that are able to ingest this data and the amount of data, the cultural piece that we were talking about a moment ago, and really turn that over um, and be able to actually monetize that. So putting data in the hands of people that can use it right now today. So my premise is that traditional IT centric shared services and those delivery models are going to be displaced if they aren't already. So companies need to shift from an outdated command and control data team to alternative approaches and solutions that are built to support, integrate, and scale that demand outside of IT. And for what it's worth, I think that corporations have a choice. You can be disrupted or you can transform. And I think it's important to understand the distinction between disruption and transformation. So, disruption is when somebody else changes your business for you and you get socked in the mouth. Transformation is when you change your business to disrupt the market. When you have a tool and you are able to move forward and transform and change the way that you do business before you get punched, like Iron Mike says here. So, what are the keys to data dexterity? Everyone, including CIOs, plays a key role in helping their organizations pivot from traditional top down, co created data business. They must work with their senior leaders, particularly with the heads of all business units, on these four keys. The first key is clarify the company's data ambitions. So you need to share a common understanding of what data dexterity means for the company and help leaders that are dispersed and have dispersed data initiatives with the corporate or business strategies that they need. It should also help senior leaders assess the level of risk the company then is willing to accept as you start to have data dexterity and as you start to distribute these data access. The second point is to encourage openness to co create and scale the innovative ways of developing new enterprise standards. So I'm thinking along the lines of design thinking technologies such as empathy maps or customer journey maps to converse with leaders in functions such as procurement or finance or HR about how ways of working need to change, how access to that data and how they are going to use the data is important. So no longer are we just using the design thinking techniques that we approach our customers with. We need to be using them internally as well. The third point is to facilitate the access to data subject matter experts and to help collectively challenge restrictive standards. So viewing the opportunity with a product centric delivery model, so actually thinking of data as a product, is progressive and an easy access to those SMEs almost 5 times more likely to have high data profitability. So if you provide all of that access, if you look at data as a product and you're able to get and the SMEs as the delivery engine for them, you're 5 times more likely to have high data profitability. And last but not least, we want to connect to data teams with other teams. We want to have the insights. We want to have the collaboration into how other teams are working. It acts as a powerful driver for us. And in our experience, in my experience, we found that brokering such connections across business functions can increase the profitability of those teams and leaders have on high data profitability. A couple of challenges and things that we need to watch out for while we're doing this. We have missed economies of scale, right? The lack of insight into what common talent needs are needed to be scalable and successful and handle the development approaches. The second thing is inconsistent skills definition. So if you have these dispersed data teams, you got to make sure that the teams are optimized and leading across the enterprise. So they don't just have skills that are stuck in a single silo, and the definition of those skills isn't stuck in a single silo. And that leads right into missed economies of intellect, right? And that's teams develop their own tools, their own approaches, and enterprises missing out on those best practices that are being delivered across all of those functional units. So let's talk about data driven decision flow and profitability. We all know that we have a data warehouse. On either side of those data warehouses, we have data scientists, ITIS, and the developers that access that data. We also have data analysts and business analysts that access that data. And then, of course, the business user. So, data analysts and business analysts and those data scientists, they either build those BI pieces or they build those homegrown reports. And the users that are able to access that information through those two sets of tools. The challenge becomes, though, when we want to refresh that information, when the users want to access something that isn't exactly in the BI homegrown tool, or isn't actually apparent or included even in the report that the data analysts or the business analysts have gone to generate. So they go to the data scientists and, well, they're shut out. IT says, sorry, I only have so many SQL experts. They don't have the time to be dealing with every business user and actually writing custom SQL and then upgrading those BI tools. If not, it's certainly cost prohibitive to do that frequently. The other option is then those business users go and talk to the data analysts, but that takes time. And we're estimating that, that's between 2 and 7 days for you to go to a BA in most organizations to have them update that report for you. And that delta in between is the magic. That is data profitability. That's where all that money comes from. If you're able to eliminate the roadblocks that come and you're able to do that and accomplish data diversity, that's when we start to see some real productivity and some real great actions happen. So let's take a look at a sample profile. Um, this is a fundamental, this is a global athletic apparel company, and they have a fundamental shift to what they're doing in their business model. They're shifting more from to a direct consumer model, meaning you're able to order them online. They're moving away from their brick and mortar stores, and those direct to consumer models demand immediate access to information and the most relevant data. So especially in the supply chain driven economy, where all of these products need to be shipped. The next thing is they want to move to in the moment decision making and drive down and be closer to the customer, so you understand what those customer demands are. So it's not just about moving and positioning inventory necessarily, but it's about understanding that I want the latest pair of whatever it is that this athletic apparel company is selling. And as AI and technology advances, the automated training models and the deployment makes it easy and more feasible for these people to do that. But this company really, there's two quotes that hit me when we were talking to this organization, and the first one was from a director of global merchandising, and she said, In the moment business decisions demands simultaneous and instant delivery of the most relevant source data in a unified experience. Right now, they are going to all sorts of disparate systems trying to access that information. It is not instant, it is not real time, and it's certainly not simultaneous across all of those other systems. And again, a different analyst with the same organization turned to me and said the most common question that I get asked from a business user is, how do I get the source data from behind that report or behind that dashboard? Where's it from? How did it even get there? And that goes back to that last slide where I showed, we need to eliminate that bottleneck and we need to achieve data diversity in order to achieve data profitability. So I know what some of you are going to say, but you remember these guys, right? From way back at the beginning. You can be on one of two sides of this conversation: the side of incremental change, where you're demonizing, regulating, and blocking innovation, romanticizing the past, as William Pierce talked about with these letter carriers. You can be standing on the corner of your lawn with your fist up in the air, shouting kids these days. Or you could be on the side of transformation, moving to data diversity, capitalizing on the ability of your end users to turn that diversity and access into profitability for the organization. What I'm really talking about here is ignoring the cries of those that are about to be crushed when the wheels of a new era roll over top of them. Be ambivalent to the implications. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's just not possible. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take some questions and do some Q&A now.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jason. That was super interesting. I'm going to bring up to the stage now Richard, amazing volunteer who's been keeping a close eye on the chat and looking out for some questions. If you have any more questions, please do drop them in there and we'll see if we can get down to a few. Have you seen anything, Richard?
Yep, Jason, we have a question from Jim, actually, a couple of them. One is, what's the best way to control data access rights when giving users more direct access to data that just doesn't add another data rights administrator layer?
It's a great question. And so really it comes down to tough conversations, understanding where those inflection points are and understanding what the corporate governance models are. A silver bullet is, there's no such thing. Those governance layers and those rights and those access pieces are going to have to be discussed with all sorts of different business units, and it's not just one size fits all. I wish I had a better answer, Jim.
And Jim has another question in terms of users' technical competence level as analysts. It takes a lot of effort to create their own reports. How do you ramp those users up without trading the analyst report creation time for even more training and user support?
Yeah, and so I think that I agree to a point, pardon me, with the premise of Jim's question. But the reality is that 50% of the people in the workforce are now millennials. I don't believe that there is a talent problem any longer with being able to generate your own queries and questions if you're given the right tools. So my suggestion to Jim is you need to understand that landscape, but you need to have that startup culture. And you need, I'd find the person in the corner who's already doing it and promote them, and start to literally share how that's worked across the organization. Maybe build a playbook to support that kind of activity.
Okay, a question from Ben kind of following up on that, and that is, can you recommend any tools or products to are really effective at democratizing access to business user data?
There's a bunch out there. I'm going to selfishly say our own, but there are great tools out there. We have a couple of tools. One's called AutoQL, which stands for Auto Query Language. Really, what it does is it takes natural language and processes your request against a data set, and you can say, "Hey, who owes me money?" and it's going to tell you, or how many socks do I have in inventory in EMEA, and it's going to give you that information. How many running shoes were sold under MSRP in the last 30 days, and being able to do that's what AutoQL does. So selfishly, our very own tool. But I would also encourage you to look at what you're doing internally and see if you don't have anything that's already there.
And one for me, actually, because I heard your introduction on the 50-year technologies, which I fundamentally agree with for most technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the presentation, you drilled into the 2 to 7 days for profitability on getting the question to the BA.
Yeah.
That 2 to 7 days in there, is that really the key point of profitability from what you've noticed?
That's not the only key to profitability. That's one of, though. And so when we're measuring profitability, we actually have to take a look at a couple of different factors. One was organizational change management. So the actual cost to implementing a new system on the impact on the organization. The second would be, yes, the efficiencies that are gained by eliminating that 2 to 7 days that are actually coming out of it. And then the third is being able to eliminate or provide the ability for those report writers, those data scientists. They have better work to do. They are brilliant folks. Many of you probably on this call as well today, or this video today. We want to encourage them to be doing their best work as well. So when you put all three of those things together, there's data profitability, and we can keep going from there.
We have another question from a lady named Chima, who basically talks about older and immature data organizations. What's the best way to achieve data diversity in those kind of immature organizations?
Yeah, and so that is going to have to start, from a strategic perspective up top. You're going to have to understand that landscape. You're going to have to assign a transformation champion or a data transformation champion. The CEOs and the COOs, CIOs, they need to foster that culture that actually goes out there and does this. You need to build for growth, and challenge constructively the business as it is today. Um, there's a bunch of different schools of thought, and one's called the three box rule. And that is, how much of your energy do you apply on what you're doing today versus how much energy do you apply on what you need to do for the future? And when you look at it, most people power their businesses by providing and implementing and putting all of their energies into keeping the lights on, the things that have currently made them profitable today. That's not going to work long term in the future. And you really need to look at that second box. And somewhere in the middle, you need to selectively abandon pieces, including a data set that's disparate and not in a unified place.